Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we are tearing into a seriously fascinating piece of tech that sits at the absolute heart of pretty much every off-grid or backup power system out there. I'm talking about the solar inverter. Now, a lot of people just glance at those basic block diagrams and kind of think, yeah, I know how that works. But today, we're taking our usual enthusiasm and applying it to some incredibly structured real-world engineering. We are going way beyond the basic boxes to actually understand the physical engineering of these machines. We're going to trace the actual journey of energy.
Because think about it, most of us just plug in our appliances and assume the power sort of magically transforms from the battery's direct current into the alternating current our homes run on. It gets treated like this mysterious black box, right? Well, it's definitely not magic, it is pure engineering, and today I absolutely promise to demystify that black box and show you exactly what happens between those battery terminals and your electrical plug.
So here's our circuit map for today's explainer. Think of me as your tour guide as we follow a single watt of energy chronologically. We'll start with the DC to AC challenge. Move inside the switching stage, step up through the voltage transformer, shape that AC output, tackle current draw and efficiency, and finally, wrap up with some hidden dangers and safety. Let's jump right in.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, the DC to AC challenge. Right off the bat, we're dealing with two completely different types of electrical flow. On one side, we have our battery, which spits out direct current, or DC. And direct current means exactly what it sounds like. The electrical flow moves steadily in only one direction. It's a one-way street. But on the flip side, we have the requirement for our homes, alternating current, or AC. The stuff you plug in every day, your refrigerator, the TV, any kind of motor, those are specifically designed around a current that is continuously reversing direction back and forth. So the massive challenge we have to solve is, how do we actually get from that steady one-way flow over to that alternating flow?
Well, here's the roadmap for how we do it. This sequential journey is exactly how energy transforms through the major stages of our circuit. It all kicks off with that steady DC energy storage from the battery. From there, it hits the MOSFET switching stage, gets shoved through the transformer for a massive voltage step-up, and finally pops out as usable AC output. Let's zoom in on that very first transformation step. Moving on to Part 2, inside the switching stage.
All right, meet the MOSFET. That stands for Metal Oxide Semiconductor Field Effect Transistor. Yeah, it's quite the mouthful. But the absolutely crucial part to remember here is that second bit. It acts like a high-speed electronic switch. We're not talking about a mechanical switch like the one you casually flip on your living room wall. The control circuits inside the inverter tell these little guys to switch on and off literally thousands of times every single second.
So, what actually happens when you open and close electrical paths that incredibly fast? Well, rapid switching creates an alternating flow of current. By forcing that steady battery power down different paths at lightning speed, the MOSFETs are essentially chopping up the steady DC into a rapidly changing back-and-forth waveform. Boom! We've successfully created alternating current. But here's the catch. At this point, it's still stuck at the low voltage of your battery. We're talking maybe 12, 24, or 48 volts. We're going to need way more electrical pressure to run a standard household appliance.
Which brings us to Part 3, the voltage transformer.
Because yeah, your appliances need way more than a 12-volt push to get going. Now, please don't let this equation freak you out. It's actually super intuitive. This is the transformer voltage ratio. The V is just your voltage, and the N is simply the number of turns in the transformer's copper wire windings. The S stands for secondary, and the P stands for primary. Basically, that rapidly switching current we just made enters the primary winding and creates a changing magnetic field inside the transformer's core. That magnetic field then induces a voltage in the secondary winding. So, the main takeaway here is this. More turns of wire on the secondary winding directly produces a proportionally higher output voltage. That is exactly, physically, how 12 volts gets stepped up to 120 or 230 volts. Pretty cool, right?
Let's keep moving. Part 4, shaping the AC output. Now, what's really interesting about this stage is that having the right voltage isn't the end of the story. We still have to finalize the actual shape of the wave. And this completely shatters the myth that all AC outputs are exactly the same. They're not. A pure sine wave uses really advanced filtering circuits to give you a perfectly smooth, clean waveform that mimics utility grid power. That is absolutely non-negotiable for sensitive electronics. But a modified sine wave, well, it's simpler and way cheaper to make, but it's this clunky, jagged, stepped wave. And that jaggedness causes harmonic distortion. It causes major compatibility headaches, makes transformers buzz and hum, and will literally cause motors to run hot and overheat. If you want your gear to run safely and actually last, the purest sine wave is absolutely what you want.
All right, switching gears to part 5, current draw and efficiency. So let's pivot away from the AC output for a second and look backwards at the battery draw itself. And this brilliantly illustrates a core reality of electrical engineering that you just have to know. Battery current draw, that's the I here, equals power divided by voltage. Why on earth does this matter to us? Well, if you have a lower voltage system, let's say a 12-volt battery instead of a beefy 48-volt one, but you're demanding the exact same wattage out of it, the current drawn from that 12-volt battery has to be massively higher. This is exactly why 12-volt systems require cables that look like garden hoses to deliver the same power as a 48-volt system. If you don't use thick enough cables, those wires will melt right off the terminals in a huge, smoky mess.
And speaking of heat, we have to talk about efficiency. Real inverters in the real world are never, ever 100% efficient. The power you actually get out, your P out, is always going to be less than the power you put in, your P in. The gap between those two numbers, that's lost energy. The super simple formula just sets up the stark reality of system losses that we have to plan for in absolutely any solar setup.
So where is all that energy actually disappearing to? Well, as the power makes its journey, energy gets lost in those MOSFETs that are working incredibly hard. It's lost in the electrical resistance of the copper transformer windings, it's lost as magnetic friction inside the core itself, and of course, it takes energy to run the control boards and spin up the cooling fans. All of that copper resistance and magnetic action generates very real, very tangible heat, which brings us to something absolutely crucial.
Part 6. Hidden Dangers and Safety. Thousands of amps. Just let that sink in for a second. Thousands. That is the potential current a standard battery bank can dump out in an instant if a short circuit happens. If things go sideways, this unbelievable rush of energy creates a severe arc flash, a massive fire risk, and frankly, the potential for a literal explosion.
And because of all that power, the components inside the box can and do fail if they aren't managed perfectly. We're talking basic stuff like overload and poor ventilation, but also highly technical failures, like what engineers call shoot-through conditions, which is basically when the MOSFETs glitch and accidentally open a direct short circuit, rapidly causing thermal runaway. Excessive temperature is literally the #1 cause of damage in these units, and that right there is exactly why those bulky heat sinks and those noisy cooling fans you hear are completely non-negotiable when it comes to system safety. But hey, the danger isn't only inside the inverter box itself. Using undersized cables, that gives you bad voltage drop, crazy heat buildup, and eventually the insulation literally melts off the wire. But you want to know the absolute biggest hazard of them all? Missing fuses. Listen to me. The inverter alone does not, I repeat, does not provide adequate fault protection for your system. A properly rated fuse has to be installed physically as close to that battery source as you can manage. Without it, you're risking uncontrolled fault current and catastrophic fires. Simple as that.
As we wrap up our energy journey for today's explainer, I really want to highlight this awesome quote from our source material. The goal is understanding the engineering principles rather than memorizing a diagram. And honestly, by tracing the actual physical flow of this energy from the steady DC through the rapid-fire MOSFETs up into the magnetic fields of the transformer and out as perfectly shaped AC, you guys have done exactly that today. Really understanding the physical reality of this makes troubleshooting a breeze and makes your system designs vastly safer.
So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Based on everything we just uncovered today about heat, massive currents, and rapid switching, which inverter component do you think fails most often out there in the real world? Is it the battery connections trying to handle all those massive amps? Is it the MOSFETs literally switching thousands of times a second? Or maybe those heavy transformers dealing with magnetic saturation and heat? Think about the actual physics of the circuit we just walked through. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me for this deep dive into solar inverter engineering. Stay curious, stay safe out there, and I really hope this helps you build better, safer systems.